Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, Israel reports finding a tunnel used by Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. What the army says about plans for an alleged attack on Israel. Authorities say they have arrested a man in connection with making threats against FEMA personnel in North Carolina, halting some aid efforts in the state. New funding for hurricane recovery in Florida. Federal and state officials are pushing hard to turn the lights back on in hard-hit areas. Jack Bradley at the White House. With just about 3 weeks left before the election, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump hold dueling events in Pennsylvania. Iris Tao and Jason Blair are in the critical swing state to bring us the latest from both campaigns. And Dave Martin takes a look at polling in the battleground states and just how much money the candidates are spending there.
This is NTD Evening News. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Israel reports discovering an underground tunnel in Lebanon. The Hezbollah terrorist group was allegedly preparing for a major attack on Israel. This as both sides continue to exchange fire. On Sunday, a Hezbollah drone attack on Israel killed 4 soldiers and injured more than 60 people. That's according to first responders and the Israeli military. It's one of the bloodiest attacks on Israel since the beginning of the war last October. Here's the latest.
Israel's military says millions of people rushed to shelters as sirens sounded across numerous locations. Hezbollah reportedly fired projectiles from Lebanon. The Israeli army says approximately 15 missiles were identified crossing into Israel. This CCTV video shows the moment a projectile hit an area in northern Israel. Hezbollah also targeted an army base in central Israel on Sunday, reportedly killing 4 Israeli soldiers.
We are required to provide better protection. We will investigate this incident. We will learn and improve our role to better protect our soldiers and the citizens of the state Israel.
And the Lebanese Red Cross says an Israeli strike hit an apartment building, killing at least 21 people. Israel is currently conducting an operation against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Officials say the terrorist group is often placing military targets in civilian areas, using them as human shields. The Israeli army released this video saying it shows a Hezbollah underground compound in southern Lebanon.
They were planned with the motorcycles here to go to Kiryat Shmona, to Iftach, to villages and positions inside Israel and conduct a massacre.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once again calling on the Lebanese people in the south to evacuate their homes amid the fighting.
Israel is not fighting UNIFIL. It's not fighting the people of Lebanon. It is fighting Iran's proxy Hezbollah, which uses Lebanese territory to attack Israel.
Israeli officials previously stated that the goal of its operation is to secure the border zone. That's so that Israeli residents can return to their homes.
And the Pentagon said Sunday that the U.S. will send an advanced anti-missile system and U.S. troops to operate it to Israel. That's to help bolster the country's air defenses after Iran's unprecedented attacks against it this year. A North Carolina man was arrested over the weekend for allegedly threatening FEMA employees who are assisting with recovery efforts following Hurricane Helene. While the storm may have passed, its impact continues to affect communities across the state. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
According to the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office, federal emergency responders assisting with Hurricane Helene recovery efforts in North Carolina received threats over the weekend, temporarily halting aid due to concerns about an alleged armed militia. The suspect, 44-year-old William Jacob Parsons, has been charged with going armed to the terror of the public, a misdemeanor. A spokesperson for the Sheriff's Office told the Asheville Citizen-Times that on Saturday, Parsons reportedly threatened and FEMA workers who were assisting in the Lake Lure and Chimney Rock areas. Later that day, Parsons was located in his vehicle outside a grocery store that was serving as a storm relief site where he was arrested. He has since been released on a $10,000 bond. The sheriff's office also said that Parsons acted alone and there was no armed militia as previously reported. Meanwhile, North Carolina is still recovering from the storm. Buncombe County officials say more than 6,000 remain without power. Debris removal also continues at critical infrastructure, including medical sewers and school facilities in the county.
Separate storm-related debris at the curb in the right-of-way according to material types. Appliances, construction debris, household hazardous waste like pesticides and automotive fluid, vegetative debris, and electronics.
Buncombe County officials confirm that water is beginning to flow in through the city of Asheville's pipes.
Our Water Resources Department is currently able to flow about 12 million gallons per day into the distribution system, and we're using that right now to support flushing of the water system as well as expansion of water into the distribution system.
He goes on to say,
as I've said before, we have a highly protected watershed that feeds the North Fork Reservoir. We have reports from our staff that the clear water has returned to the streams. So our streams that are feeding that reservoir are now feeding it with clean, clear water. So again, that's good news. Every day, multiple times a day, we have our laboratory staff.
Officials have issued a boil water advisory for residents in the North Fork distribution area and the Mills River service area. Residents who plan to use water for drinking, cooking, or brushing their teeth are urged to boil it for at least 1 minute before use. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Florida is recovering after 2 consecutive hurricanes. Federal and state officials announced new funding to rebuild damaged infrastructure. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley brings us more from the White House.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announcing new funding to rebuild the ports on the East Coast that were heavily impacted by Hurricane Milton. This comes a day after President Biden made his way down to Tampa, Florida, where he announced more than $500 million to rebuild the state's electric grid. The devastation of Hurricanes Helene and Milton is still being assessed. That's as Florida residents are enduring the unusual back-to-back storms in 2 weeks. Governor Ron DeSantis announcing new funding for East Coast seaports.
To minimize impacts to Floridians and to ensure Seaport Vanity gets back to full and efficient operations as quickly as possible, I'm today announcing that the state of Florida will provide $9.5 million to jumpstart the recovery and help repair the impacted infrastructure.
DeSantis also said that debris removal could take up to a year. This comes a day after President Biden was in Tampa to survey the damage caused by Hurricane Milton. He announced more than $500 million in funding to rebuild the electric grid.
I spoke with first responders who've been working around the clock. I also met with small business owners here and homeowners who have taken a real beating these back-to-back storms. And they're heartbroken and exhausted, and their expenses are piling up.
He announced more than $500 million in funding to rebuild the electric grid. That's as hundreds of thousands are still without power. Biden said the funding will restore power to the region and make its systems stronger and more capable for future natural disasters. He said there's been a whole government effort, including assistance from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to provide aid to communities. He said individuals can ask for different types of assistance, such as financial aid, no interest payment loans, and mortgage relief. Even though it's going to be a long road to recovery, residents tell me that they're keeping their heads high, helping each other in this time of disaster, and grateful that it wasn't worse. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris campaigns in northwestern Pennsylvania. Former President Trump holds a town hall in the suburbs of Philadelphia. It comes as his campaign officially announces a rally at New York City's Madison Square Garden. NTD's Iris Tao has more from Oaks, Pennsylvania.
As both candidates are seeking to win this biggest battleground prize with 19 electoral votes, former President Trump is holding a town hall here with a focus on the economy. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem will be moderating it. Trump is trying to appeal to voters in this key state with his energy policies, especially when it comes to oil drilling and fracking. Polls are showing that Trump and Harris are in a dead heat here in Pennsylvania, and Monday will mark Harris's 10th visit to this state in this campaign season and Trump's third stop here in just 1 week. Earlier on Monday, Trump's running mate Senator J.D. Vance was speaking before a police station in Minneapolis with a theme on public security.
President, we want somebody who stands with our law enforcement and most importantly, who stands with the communities that depend on law enforcement, and that means we want Donald J. Trump as president.
Meanwhile, as Trump swings through battleground states, his campaign on Monday officially announced that Trump will be holding a rally in Madison Square Garden in deep blue New York City on October 27th, just 9 days before the election. His campaign says the economy will be the main focus as, quote, disastrous economic policies are draining the bank accounts of hardworking New Yorkers. On Tuesday, Trump will participate in a pre-taped TV town hall hosted by Fox News with a focus on women's issues. It will air at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, just hours before Vice President Kamala Harris is set to participate in a live Fox News interview just on that evening. Reporting from Oaks, Pennsylvania, Iris Howe, NTD News.
NTD's correspondent Jason Blair has an update on the Harris campaign from Erie, Pennsylvania.
Coming into the final stretch, former President Trump has been outpacing Vice President Harris as far as doing campaign events. However, Harris has been showing some signs of really speeding things up this week. ABC News reported that Trump did 21 events in September that include rallies, town halls, campaign events, public appearances where he gave remarks, and Harris only did 13. But as I said, Harris this week has really been gearing things up and started out the week with 2 events on Sunday in North Carolina. This week, Harris is scheduled to be in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia. Including here later today, she's going to be speaking in Erie, Pennsylvania at a rally.
Well, I care about fixing problems. And as President of the United States, I will be focused each and every day on solving problems that affect you and your family.
And it was also just announced that Harris will sit down for an interview in Pennsylvania with Fox News on Wednesday. It's scheduled to air at 6 p.m. Eastern on Special Report with Brett Baer on the same day, according to Fox. And then in Detroit, Harris is scheduled to have a radio town hall with the Breakfast Club. According to the show, users can log into iHeartRadio on the app and submit questions for the vice president there. According to a campaign official, Harris is supposed to unveil new policy, economic policy that will benefit Black Americans. However, on that topic, on Monday, Harris did reveal plans to provide 1 million forgivable loans of up to $20,000 to Black entrepreneurs in order to start a business. They will be up to $20,000. Reporting in Erie, Pennsylvania, Jason Blair, NTD News.
From 2016 to 2024, have people changed their minds on whom to vote for? NTD's Sam Wong was out at the National Mall to hear from voters.
How'd you voted in 2016 and 2020?
2016 and 2020, I voted for Donald Trump. And I thought, being a businessman, I thought he would be, he'd bring a different type of mentality to running.
We are lifelong liberal Democrats. Policies which are humane, who care for we, the people.
Donald Trump. I'm a conservative, and I thought he was the best decision.
Hillary Clinton and Trump. Once Trump was in, you know, it made sense. He's the kind of the alpha dog, someone you'd want to lead the country.
2020 was Biden.
Yeah.
2016 was
Hillary Clinton.
We wouldn't vote for Trump even if we were Republicans.
Donald Trump. He was the best for conservative values.
And who are you voting for in this election?
Most likely Trump. Proven leadership, accomplishments, kind of the opposite of Harris.
So this year I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. The January 6th, as I said, basically changed me because I don't think he believes in democracy.
I'll vote for Trump. He was there for 4 years, and it was a pretty good 4 years.
Harris swallows ticket. And Vice President Harris, who is very principled, believes in the Constitution, believes in the law.
It's Kamala Harris I'm voting for. Dick Cheney was one of the most corrupt people to ever be
around the White House, in my opinion. So it does concern me that he's backing Harris.
Donald Trump again. We are going down a path that we don't want to go down, and we need to get our freedoms back, and I believe Donald Trump is the one to do that.
With such a slim majority for both House Democrats and Republicans over the past 4 years, this year's fight for the gavel could come down to a handful of races or even a single one. NTD's Melina Weisskopf brings us more on the most competitive down-ballot races.
Around 70 competitive seats for the U.S. Congress are on the radar. Democrats, being in the minority, have to flip several seats in order to take back the gavel. Republicans have to be able to maintain the seats they have to keep that majority, but they can't afford even a single net loss. That said, based on ratings and polling, if all races go as expected, Republicans appear to have a better chance at holding power, and that's based on just the numbers with no other factors involved. And with this being an election year, the top of the ticket is almost certain to trickle down. If Republicans still feel the same about Trump as they did in 2020 and Democrats about their party, there are several toss-up seats that are most vulnerable to flipping. On the East and West Coast, you have Democrat victories more likely, with areas such as in California that are currently held by Republicans that Biden won by double digits back in 2020. One example is Republican Congressman John Duarte. He flipped a seat held by Democrats since the 1970s, but this is also an area that Trump lost by almost 11 points in 2020. And if Democrats in his district still feel the same about having a Democrat in the White House and Duarte does not win split ticket voters, it could mean a loss for the GOP. A similar situation you see over in the East Coast with several tough down ballot races over in New York, but away from the coastlines, you see vulnerable Democrat seats where Trump won in 2020. Take Pennsylvania's 8th district, for example. It's held by Democrat Matt Cartwright, but if voters still have strong support for Trump there, it could mean a loss for Democrats if the top of the ticket trickles down. It being a district Trump won by nearly 3 points in 2020. Now, there are other scenarios at play here. For example, Michigan's 7th district is an area that Trump barely lost by less than a point back in 2020, but he's now made a priority. He's visited Minnesota's 7th district twice in just 2 weeks during this campaign season. As for what all of this means for the balance of power, well, there are several factors to consider, but the top of the ticket is a key factor, considering the fact that split ticket voting is a very rare occurrence in U.S. elections. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. China's military launched and ended a round of war games near Taiwan today. The U.S. and the Taiwanese government condemned it. It's the second time Beijing has conducted such large-scale drills near Taiwan. Both happened after the Taiwanese president firmly asserted Taiwan's sovereignty. Let's have a closer look.
The Chinese military's Eastern Theater Command said the drills were taking place in the Taiwan Strait and 9 areas around the island. Taiwan's Defense Ministry and Coast Guard said Monday that both agencies had dispatched their own forces. Fighter jets were seen taking off and landing at Taiwan's Hsinchu Air Base Monday morning. And Taiwan's Coast Guard released this video said to show one of its ships broadcasting a message asking a Chinese Coast Guard vessel to leave its waters. Taiwanese officials said Lai's National Security Council convened on Monday to discuss the situation. The Council's Secretary General Joseph Wu said that Taiwan would not escalate the conflict.
We also need to stay calm and confident to prevail in the struggle between democracy and authoritarianism. We will stay moderate and responsible and work hard to maintain the cross-strait status quo to help maintain peace and stability in the region.
In Washington, officials from the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden said there was no justification for the drills and that they were continuing to monitor them.
Beijing's ruling body, the Chinese Communist Party, has never ruled Taiwan, but it claims the island as part of China and considers it a core interest. Taiwan sits at a strategic location right on the first island chain. The chain geographically blocks Beijing submarines from sailing deep into the Pacific, limiting their ability to threaten the U.S. On top of that, Taiwan produces more than 90% of the world's most advanced microchips. U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo has warned the impact of a Chinese seizure of Taiwan's biggest chipmaker would be devastating. How are Chinese citizens reacting to China's latest war games around Taiwan? In the capital city of Beijing, residents say that despite their wish for peace in the region, they would support any decision made by the Chinese regime.
For us ordinary people, war is definitely not wanted. Whether it is for Taiwan or any other country, we do not want such a horrible event as war to happen. If something really damages the rights and interests of our country, we ordinary people will also stand on the side of our country and support the country.
And what consequences could China possibly face if Beijing's military invaded the island? In early April, Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer said the U.S. would immediately enact massive financial sanctions and major trade restrictions on China, and China would do the same to the U.S. He went on to say that military actions would follow. He said the two largest economies in the world, for all intents and purposes, would be at war. The Nobel Prize for Economics is shared by 3 people, 2 of whom wrote the best-selling book Why Nations Fail. Their research concludes that democracy is better for prosperity in the long term. Here's the story.
The Nobel Prize for Economics goes to 3 individuals, Darren Ashimoglu, Simon Johnson, and James Robinson, for their research on factors that influence the development of prosperity. Ashimoglu and Robinson co-authored the best-selling book Why Nations Fail.
Darren and Simon and I have been working for almost 30 years together, so it's sort of our life's work.
Winner James Robinson says the research is focused on the enormous differences between prosperous countries and poor countries.
Inclusive economic institutions have secure property rights and things that uphold something like equality of opportunity, a level playing field. So education, public infrastructure, the right kind of regulation are key.
Winner Darren Ashimoglu says democracy generally leads to prosperity, especially long term. Citizens can invest and start businesses without the government taking them away.
Yes, you can have episodes of growth under different arrangements, but if you want to sustain that growth over time, it's much stronger and much more robust if you can move towards the kind of inclusive participation.
Winner Simon Johnson says autocratic countries can grow quickly, too, by mobilizing resources and directing them to existing sectors and firms. But this kind of growth is less sustainable long-term and results in less innovation.
How do you provide evidence for that kind of claim? This is really difficult task.
Nobel Committee member Jan Torau explains they did this by researching European colonialism. They looked at how different colonies contained different numbers of Europeans by researching mortality rates.
The more settlers you had, the more you had to establish institutions that were good for investment. The fewer Europeans actually settled. And that meant that the Europeans either took over or established extractive institutions for the benefit of a narrow elite.
The winners acknowledge that China is growing rapidly, but say that it will have a harder time having long-term sustainable innovation outcomes.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. The Hezbollah terrorist group in Lebanon launched a drone attack on a military base in Israel, killing 4 soldiers and wounding 61 others. Fighting intensified as the Lebanese Red Cross reported an Israeli strike killing at least 21 people. China's military launched a new round of war games near Taiwan. The Chinese regime's Coast Guard circled Taiwan and staged operations close to Taiwan's offshore islands. The U.S. and Taiwan condemned the drills. A North Carolina man was arrested for allegedly threatening FEMA employees responding to Hurricane Helene. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis announced a $9.5 million plan to rebuild Port Manatee following Hurricane Milton. And President Biden announced federal aid to local communities hard hit by the storms. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump campaign in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania. Harris holds a rally in Erie as her campaign announces an economic initiative targeting Black men. Trump joins a town hall in Oaks near Philadelphia. Joining us now at the Election Data Hub is NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, just 22 days are left until the election. As we zero in on the swing states, what are the polls showing and how much emphasis are the candidates putting on these states?
Thank you, Tiff. Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at these swing state polling here. This is according to an Emerson College poll of likely voters taken just earlier this month. Let's look at the 3 blue wall states here, starting with Wisconsin and Michigan. They're tied actually right now in those 2 states. That's 25 electoral votes between those 2. And the big one here in Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes, Trump with a 1-point lead there. Now, this one's still the most surprising to me right here. North Carolina, this is the only swing state that Trump has won in each of the last 2 elections, but Harris is very close there, just a 1-point lead for Trump. 16 electoral college votes there, 16 as well in Georgia, where Trump is enjoying a 1-point lead. Then out west, Arizona, 11 electoral votes, Trump with a 2-point lead out there. And finally, Nevada, just 6 electoral votes, but they are very critical here. Harris, a 1-point lead there. So there's 4 leads for Trump, 1 for Harris, and 2 ties, but they are all within this 3% margin of error. Now, as I mentioned, Pennsylvania is the big one here, but are other candidates actually treating that way? For sure they are. Let's look at the dollars spent in advertising in the swing states. This is since July 22nd going all the way to October 8th, according to Ad Impact. Number 1 here, this is Pennsylvania, $159 million. Kamala Harris is spending in Pennsylvania. You can see here the rest of the 3 blue wall states, Michigan and Wisconsin, in order. She's clearly trying to protect those states there. This isn't really a prioritized according to electoral college votes, because North Carolina, 16 is tied with Georgia as number 2, but they are on down the list. Let's take a look at Trump's spending in these same states. He's actually prioritizing the same 3 blue wall states here, pretty much, except Georgia more than Wisconsin. Clearly, he sees these polls and has got a good chance to win these 3 states like he did in Wisconsin. But look here, all across the board here, Kamala Harris is outspending him all across the board by more than $150 million over these swing states. Let's take a look at the message, though, that she is sending here. Kamala Harris, top mentioned issues in her advertisements. Number 1, taxation. Right behind it, then you got healthcare, housing, abortion, and finally crime, clearly drawing on her time as district attorney. Let's actually right now, let's take a look at one of her ads that she's been airing.
As a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on investing right now in you, the American people. And we can chart a new way forward. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
So, that one, you actually say her character seemed to be the top issue in that ad. Let's take a look at Trump's, though. Trump top mentioned issues in his advertising, of course, inflation and the economy, number 1 and number 2 there. And you got housing, immigration, and just like Kamala Harris, crime is number 5. But I say Trump seems to like to let Kamala Harris do some of the talking in his advertisements. Let's go ahead and play one of those for you right now.
J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Everyday prices are too high. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes. That is called Bidenomics. A loaf of bread cost 50% more today. Ground beef is up almost 50%. There's not much left at the end of the month. Bidenomics is working. The price of housing has gone up. It feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. And we are very proud of Bidenomics.
So that one you could say was actually more about the economy, of course, and inflation. Now, as far as what you're going to see over the next 3 weeks, let's take a look at these future ads already spent. You can see Trump actually over the next 3 weeks has outspent her by just a couple million. But if you look at Republican groups and Democrat groups have outspent Republicans by $90 million on future ads that are set to run over the next couple of weeks. So Tiff, clearly both candidates feel that there's plenty of votes out there for them to win. So back to you at the desk.
All right, Dave, thank you for that breakdown. Harris's efforts to appeal to black male voters come as her support is slipping among this demographic. Joining us now to discuss her new policy plan is political strategist and attorney Dante Mills. Dante, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, to begin, the Harris campaign has laid out a new plan for Black men, which includes forgiving business loans for Black entrepreneurs, legalizing marijuana, regulating cryptocurrency, and more. Now, this is after former President Obama called on Black men to support Harris and suggested that Black men aren't voting for her because they're not ready for a female president. How effective do you think the Harris campaign's approach has been so far when it comes to mobilizing Black male voters?
I don't think it's been effective at all, which is why you see this new push. I applaud the fact that she is out there trying to have direct lines of communication with places that they get their news from. She's going to be on with Charlamagne the God, who's a popular radio host. She's done other things to kind of put her in a space where she can have that audience. But once she gets that audience, she has to really make it clear how she supports them. And part of her knock is when she was at the district attorney's office or the attorney general for the state of California, she had an opportunity to revamp some programs and do some things for Black male Americans who feel like sometimes the justice system is not for them, right? And that it's against them. And the knock is that she did not take steps to change that when she had the chance. So she's going to have to first acknowledge that or point to the steps that she took when she held those offices to say, I represented you before and I'm going to do it again. What she can't do is just throw out some generic topics like legalizing marijuana and things like that and think that Black men is just going to be on board with that, because that's just not how any group of people are. Everybody has their issues that's individual to them. And I don't know if those are the things that are going to make them vote for some person over another.
And in your view, what's appealing about the Trump-Vance ticket to Black voters, Black men especially?
I don't know if they have anything that's appealing specifically to Black men, but I can tell you that they're going to rely on the economy. They're really pushing that as their number one issue, and that affects every American. So when we start to talk about individual groups, yes, you have opportunities to connect with individual groups, but they're still American. Black men are still Americans, right? And we have the same issues that other Americans have, like feeding our family. There's issues with immigration, healthcare, whatever the top issues are, women's rights, because we have mothers, sisters, wives, daughters. So all of these issues are going to touch Black men just like they touch everybody else. And if a candidate can say, I'm going to be inclusive, right, and make sure I'm reaching everybody, then they have the opportunity to get that voting block. I don't think former President Trump is inclusive specifically to Black men at all, but I do think that if he's talking basics of economy, then there's Black men who's going to look at that and say, I want to make sure I feed my family, so maybe I'm going to look for my vote going to former President Trump. But I think that Vice President Harris has an opportunity here, and clearly she sees a need, and she's going out of her way, which suggests to Black men that she cares enough to do that, and hopefully she can be successful in that journey and reach them where they are.
On that last point, Black male votes aren't the only male voting bloc that the Harris campaign is working to boost enthusiasm in. There is another campaign for Hispanic men. Now, this effort was just announced last week after polls showed Harris lagging behind Trump with young Latino men. But what do you make of the timing and efficacy of these targeted campaigns? Is it too late in the cycle to introduce these kinds of efforts?
I don't know. It's never too late. We still have, there has been some voting that's began in some states, but it's never too late because there's still votes that has to happen. So you always want to go in through the finish line where you're trying to reach as many people as possible. But I also know that you have to make sure, because there's limited time, that you're focusing your time on what you think will be impactful. That's just the truth of politics. You can't reach everybody because it's just not enough time in a day or enough money to spend on ads where you're addressing every single issue. So what the campaign is doing right now is they're in the weeds. They're targeting people that they believe they have the ability to impact. They're looking at the numbers now that she's been running this campaign for a while and saying, where are we lagging behind? Where can we make a difference? And then they're focusing their efforts there because they think those differences may be the difference in winning or losing. So I applaud this campaign for doing that research. Every politician does it. They say, where are we lacking? Where can we improve? Now let's focus on that. And hopefully it makes a difference come election time.
And speaking of that research, zooming out a bit here, recent polling from CBS News, New York Times, and Siena College shows a drop in black support for Democrats. Harris polling about 78% support versus the 90% the Democratic Party used to get. What do you see as the biggest drivers behind that dip?
The economy, that's driving everything. So I think that overall, people are looking and saying the Democratic Party, their platform on economic policy, has it been beneficial for us overall? We're past the time of people saying, I've always been a Democrat, so I'm going to vote Democrat no matter what. They're looking at specifics and saying, is this actually helping me? And I think that some of the recent economic policy has not been helpful for America, and that trickles down to every voting bloc. But there is an opportunity here. You see Vice President Harris trying to change the corner and making it about an opportunity economy where there's stimulus, where you're providing people with the chance to open up small businesses and things like that, as opposed to just handouts that you can hand somebody $600 today, and then next week they're going to be hungry again. They're going to have that need again. So I think a change in economic policy is good for the Democratic Party. You see Vice President Harris moving in that direction, and I think she has the opportunity to get those numbers back up to what they need to be. But she has to convince everybody that she's going to be a little different than President Biden and focus more on the economy and making sure that everybody is secure, moving forward, and can feed their families.
And Harris will sit down for her first ever interview with Fox News this Wednesday. What do you expect to come out of that interview?
It's going to be interesting because the knock that we hear at the interviews that she's done before and also at the debate with former President Trump is that she had the help from the moderators, or the person who she was sitting down with the interview for was a friendly face and gave her softball questions. I can assure you we're not going to have those softball questions on Fox News. And she's going to have an opportunity to show that she can stand in the ring with anybody and battle and come out on top. So if she's focused in her answers, if she has those good responses, you expect her to be prepared for some questions that are going to challenge her. And I think voters need to see that. They need to see her challenge, but they also need to see her come out of that challenge on top. And if they do, it can give her a boost in the polls. If she kind of folds under that pressure, then it can be a bad thing for her. And you may look back on this and say, well, that was too risky. She shouldn't have done it. But clearly her team thinks that she can handle that pressure. And I'm very interested to see it. I think it's going to be a really good interview.
Dante Mills, political strategist and attorney, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
An NTD original film premiered today. Many people across the country say they are fed up with our leaders, but where would you even start if you wanted to run for office? Anna Summers, the main character in NTD's newest comedy film, finds out the hard way. Your Vote Matters tells the story of this ambitious, albeit naive young woman who dives headfirst into local politics, only to discover its seedy underbelly. NTD's Chris Beers spoke to the cast. Take a look.
Are you sick and tired of the same old corrupt people running your town? Maybe it's time for a change. Vote Anna Summers for mayor.
Joining me now is Lauren Elizabeth Harris, who plays Anna Summers in the film Your Vote Matters. Lauren, tell us about Anna. Who is this person?
So Anna is a boutique owner in a small town called Littletown. Hi! Can I help you? Hey! Wait! You can't do that! Thief! Her store keeps getting robbed, and she gets tired of the bail reform laws in her community, and she decides that it's time to do something about it, and she's going to run for office herself.
Do you have a family history in politics?
No. I don't know anything about politics.
Jonathan Andrews, the seasoned political consultant, comes in and he sort of guides her through it. And as she learns, we're learning with her.
You don't want to play in the world of politics. It's mean, it's nasty, it's ruthless.
Opening your eyes up to the seedy underbelly of politics can really, scare you off.
Got any shortcuts?
Sure, buy some signatures.
Wait, you're serious? You know, Anna to me resembles somebody that we really need today in modern politics. She's not somebody who has an Ivy League degree. She's not wealthy. She didn't know what a political career really meant for her, but she knew that she needed to see change in her community, so she went for it and she was willing to learn.
I'm Anna Summers, running for mayor.
Kind of young, aren't you? Are you a Democrat or Republican?
Neither. either. Actually, I'm an independent.
Independent? Only losers run independent.
It was important to make the film politically neutral. It was important to make it a film that was entertaining for everybody.
I deliberately stayed very neutral in the approach because the bigger issue of politics to me is really about the system and about the forces that work behind the scenes, behind parties, the money that's involved. And also, I wanted it to be about somebody who cares about her town, and she's not really invested in a party or a system. She just wants to do something good.
Apart from her looks, she really doesn't have much going for her.
Jonathan, these people are evil!
Lauren did such a fantastic job as Anna. I feel like she's the only one who could have pulled off that role. And everyone, Rinzin and Rachel, Sal did a phenomenal job.
This is Mary's boyfriend, Tim. He was the local marketing genius at Penn State.
Anna's exaggerating. I know a few things about SEO optimization and data mining using AI.
Stop showing off.
That's hardly showing off. Yeah, I don't know anything about data mining and whatnot. I searched up on Google, what is data mining? I was like, all those stuff that I said on Google, it just confused me more.
Mary and her boyfriend, Tim, really pull out all the stops to help Anna in her run for office. What's motivating them? Why do they go so far for her?
When you see somebody who's really doing something that they believe in and you see how challenging it is and you really care about that person, you want to do everything you can to help. And I think that that is really where Mary and Tim are coming from. What is Anna supposed to do?
You don't like the laws? Then run for office and change them.
Say they give me the money and I manage to get elected. I'm always going to be thinking about these guys coming back for favors.
Anna, that's how politics works.
I don't feel so good.
I thought they did an amazing job. I thought the acting was the best, most amazing part of the film, of course.
Talked all about, like how if you want to run for office, what do you need to know? What do you need to do that anyone can make a difference, that just a normal person can come up and change things for their own community. And I thought that was great. And it, your vote matters.
Well, I think it's really educational. I think it also does discuss how bipartisan politics can often interrupt the political process and the democratic politic that we are here in the United States.
Stop this! Give me back my hammer! What's happened to our country? I'm running for mayor to save this town, not just sell you out to the highest bidder.
Anna, that's how politics works!
And the final tally is in.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. It may seem a little early to be talking about Thanksgiving, but each year Canadians come together in October to celebrate family, friends, and the season of harvest. Let's look at the significance of Canadian Thanksgiving at Taves Family Farms.
Happy Thanksgiving! Happy Thanksgiving!
Thanksgiving is a time to show appreciation for the gifts of life and to enjoy the bounty of the harvest.
We're foraging for the family. I haven't harvested anything except for these pumpkins, which are on the shelves conveniently for us.
Similar to American Thanksgiving and traditional European harvest festivals, Thanksgiving in Canada is an annual holiday that falls on the second Monday of October due to a shorter growing season than their neighbors to the south.
It's a good get-together, and it's a fall season. It's Thanksgiving Day as well, so it's always great to be thankful of.
It was declared an official holiday in 1957 when the Governor-General of Canada, Vincent Massey, issued a proclamation stating, "A day of general thanksgiving to Almighty God for the bountiful harvest with which Canada has been blessed, to be observed on the second Monday in October."
It's a nice and really warm welcoming people to the season, and on that day we are planning with our friends to have Thanksgiving.
In many ways, the Canadian Thanksgiving is very similar to the one in America. Although they don't have big parades to celebrate the occasion, there is the Thanksgiving Day Classic, an annual professional Canadian football event. And just like Americans, one of the most common ways to share thanks and to honor the day is a feast with the family.
It's a turkey. You will be making turkey and then spend with the family.
The pumpkin is used for both food and decoration this time of year, according to the Agricultural Marketing Resource Center. Between Canada and the U.S., over 2 billion pounds of pumpkins are grown each year in over 200 different varieties.
Pumpkin pie that you can enjoy with family during the season.
Had some fun picking out some pumpkins, all types of different sizes and colors. Ooh, we're gonna get a wheelbarrow full.
Most of all, though, it's about spending time with loved ones and being grateful.
Thanksgiving, the family come to meet and staying together.
We love spending time together. Definitely grateful to have our 3 little munchkins. Yeah. We're just gonna have a great time. We're gonna have a good dinner. We're gonna spend some time together, do some more activities.
NTD News, Canada.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.